Hey there, and welcome to Decoding the Digital Lab with CSols, the podcast that addresses current events and offers insights. I'm your host, Becky Stewart, and in this series, we're speaking to the latest buzz that people are trying to understand by sharing some insights and knowledge from top industry professionals. In today's episode, we're going to look at FAIR data. With me today is Nick Lynch. Nick has more than 25 years of experience in informatics, lab workflows, and artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data. He has previously worked at biotech startups and AstraZeneca, leading teams in R&D informatics. He specializes in working in preclinical and early clinical research, externalization, and data exchange for the AstraZeneca research activities. He has also been involved in various pre-competitive and open science activities and is a co-founder of the Pistoia Alliance. He is the founder of Curlew Research, which he formed in 2014 to work on many informatics and AI projects, including FAIR data projects with pharma, biotech, research organizations, and technology companies. Nick's going to talk about a lot of frameworks for FAIR data, and we'll put links to the resources in the description of this episode. Hi, Nick. Thanks for joining me today. FAIR data is such a complex topic that I'm glad that you could join us to help our audience understand why it should matter to them. Let's get into it, shall we?
Yes, thank you, Becky, and thanks for the chance to talk about this on your podcast. So, firstly, maybe it's worth explaining what FAIR data is in terms of the acronym. We probably have too many acronyms in life science. So, FAIR means findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. It's been around now for about 10 or 12 years with a seminal paper that was published in 2016. And really, it's about making the most of data as an activity and as a value to our research in life science. So it's particularly even more important now than perhaps 10 years ago with the growth of AI and LLM, where actually it's the data that all of those activities are built on. So in a way, it's got a second wind, or an even more important wind than it had than maybe when it was first initiated all those years ago.
Okay. You often hear that implementing FAIR principles is a journey. From your perspective, what are the most significant hurdles that labs face when starting this journey? Are these challenges more about the technology itself or about the people and processes involved?
I think it's, as you say, very much about the people, cultural and process part of adopting FAIR. Although to be successful in FAIR, you need good underlying platforms. As with any change in the way that people work, then actually it really is being able to focus on those business change activities as you would with any large transformation. And I think particularly when it comes to data, one has to really think about all the people or all the persona that are involved in the data lifecycle. Because as we're all humans, we always think about things about what's in it for me. And often with FAIR data, it really is, it's critical to focus on the role of the data creator as much as the data scientist or data consumer. And those in a data creation role don't always benefit from all the investments that we put in data. So we really need to focus in our sort of journey on making sure that those that are creating data see value from their work. And I think that's particularly part of this journey concept, as well as the fact that adopting FAIR is not a one-year project. It's a multi-year project and needs to be adjusted based on so many factors that in terms of the organization's priority and so on. So it really, the word journey is a really good word to describe what it takes to develop a FAIR process and an effective FAIR platform.
Could you say a little bit more about how to demonstrate value from FAIR data? Because I think that's probably where most people get hung up in making
Certainly.
a start.
I think that That's a good question. The value of FAIR, I think, needs to be aligned, or this journey for FAIR needs to be aligned in terms of the business priorities and the business goals of the organization. So really, that alignment is critical at the beginning of the journey, and needs to be measured and reviewed all the way through, as you would with any large change process. So if you can I
Yeah.
immediately or at the start identify some key challenges, and it's likely to be where the larger return on investment is achieved. So by
Mm.
aligning it to those key areas, often in life science, that's tended to be more downstream, because obviously the cost gets ever more exponential as you go further down the drug discovery workflow. So the
Mhm.
value of FAIR in a development and a clinical sense is likely to be that return and value will be greater initially there than perhaps earlier in the R&D workflow. So yeah, really alignment to
Okay.
business goals, alignment to key business questions, and then obviously planning it, as we've said, in a series of incremental but achievable steps, so that all the persona are that their value is returned to them, not just the data consumer, but equally this data creator that we've been talking about.
A major push we've been hearing for FAIR data is its potential to fuel AI and machine learning. Can you explain maybe why dirty or non-FAIR data is unusable for training these kinds of models, and what key steps a lab must take to clean it up for AI readiness?
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, one of the most popular phrases around AI is that it's only as good as the data that it's built on. And I think this then really reflects on where FAIR has such a critical role to play in supporting AI, in that, we think of we've been, as humans, been dealing with data for hundreds of years. And recently, to get data ready for AI, it's often been reflected that over 80% of a data scientist's role is in data wrangling. And so the more that you can do to make data usable and particularly machine readable, because machines, today don't have the intelligence to cope with some of the gotchas that you might have with data. So that investment up front in fair data really does provide a return later on when you start to use that data in an AI workflow, whether it just be normal model building, machine learning, or seeking to use it in a Gen AI workflow as well. So it really is an investment up front to hopefully, deliver value through not just normal data workflows, but in AI. And I think that, the more that we can AI in a way that it works with, deep learning relies on some of the attributes of FAIR in terms of interoperability, the use of ontologies, consistency, and the use of linking identifiers together. So it really is an underpinning activity that we need to do more of to make the most of AI going forward.
When parts of the organization have gone to FAIR data and others haven't, to end up with maybe even perpetuation of data silos, which are a persistent problem in life sciences. So how can a FAIR data approach help to break those down? What are the key components of a centralized data ecosystem that can help labs consolidate their diverse data from instruments to informatics systems?
Yes, exactly. I mean, I think, as you've said, the silos do exist. They can exist because of, obviously quite different workflows, and equally how the systems are organized within, a large or small organization. So the role of fair data can help in many ways there, in that you still wouldn't want to tackle you want to be focused on in delivering fair data domain by domain, because that keeps it achievable. And within each domain, you may well use different ontologies and different systems. But what can help glue them together are things like a consistent data catalog, somewhere where you can place data in a findable way, and the use of identifiers. And that use of identifiers will help glue and link different systems together, regardless of whether it's in chemistry, omics, biology, or later in clinical. And then equally, the accessibility of data is important. So the systems that you're using should have an API that's accessible to other systems to help you extract and make that data accessible. And maybe the not equal, and also the most important one, but also the one that perhaps is the most complex to achieve, or the one that takes the longest, is that interoperability. So the consistent use of ontologies, you may well find, or often will find, that your vocabularies and ontologies are reusable across domains. So you might be using a gene ontology in biology, but you may also be using it later on in an omics sense. So the more that those sort of things really help you glue different of those silos together, so they cease to become silos and they become a set of connected workflows with data that is much more usable and fair going forward.
Nice, yeah. And people don't have to reinvent the wheel either. Those ontologies, a lot of them are publicly accessible.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and they need to grow as well. So we can't stand on, we must be able to keep those sustainable. So yeah, the ontologies, as in, even in the rest of our normal lives, the search engines and all the other major platforms out there, ontologies are sort of the hidden source that keeps them
Mhm.
running and keeps them usable going forward in terms of concepts,
Yep.
consistency, and linkability.
So when companies are facing budget constraints, they often want to know how fair is fair enough. What advice would you give to labs on prioritizing their fair data initiatives to get the most value from their investment, especially when they can't achieve high levels overnight?
Yeah, I think that's. I think sometimes these sort of initiatives can get a bit over sort of insular in terms of what their goals are. So being really clear, as we were saying earlier, about the business goals, and really focusing on a number of key business questions that are valuable to the audience that are involved. So it is about breaking it down into those activities. I would suggest thinking about maturity, both at the beginning of a fair journey, so you know where you are and where you're starting from. And then equally being able to sort of prioritize those incremental steps. So going after a few key areas first, not necessarily needing to do everything perfectly. So interoperability is one of the most hardest. But if you just started with a couple of ontologies, you would be able to have success, and then you can add more as you find success. Similarly with identifiers, you may want to provide identifiers for your most valuable assets, but maybe you don't need to do that for every bit of metadata as well. But I think focusing really on the findable and accessible part will give you value quicker, and then you can build out incrementally based on reactions from your audience, the sort of the continuing questions that you want to ask. So very much step by step, monitor and review, and focus on the basics first and build out. And particularly this comes to the people. Your key asset here is your people and your resourcing. So the more that you can evolve their skills and bring them into this journey is just as important as the technology. It isn't certainly something that can be solved just by technology.
Mhm. And when you mentioned maturity earlier, I'm assuming you mean not just the technology maturity, but also the data maturity.
I mean, yeah, maturity in so many dimensions. One of the things I've been involved in is the Pasteur Alliance sort of fair maturity model. And there are obviously other more generic maturity models out there, sort of kind of the CMM one as well, that's more general business focused. but just being able to look across a number of dimensions, for instance, governance, the skills, obviously, platform and technology is one of that, but you can have about 7 dimensions that are critical in assessing your maturity that makes it then a useful measure for where you want to make investments going forward, and which things you don't need to do versus which things you should prioritize for your internal value, not necessarily other people's value, but the value that you want to achieve from your program of fair adoption.
So we've talked about the importance of people and processes, and on the technology side, can you talk about the role of semantic technologies like those, the allotrope simple model or Elsevier SciByte, in making data more interoperable and reusable?
Of course, yeah. I mean, we've perhaps said that it's a lot about culture and process, but yes, the technology platforms that you have are critical to success. They make fair actionable, they make it deployable, and they equally, more importantly, actually make it repeatable, because we're always generating new data, higher volumes of data. So you need to make your fair platform work not just for low volume experiments, but potentially higher volume, high throughput and analysis. So that platform, both whether it's the platform you use for the Findable, so the data catalog, whether it's the platform you want to use for the interoperability in terms of ontology management, ontology development, or the one that you want to use for your identifiers, it's certainly not one platform, but it will be a series of connected platforms and tools that really bring value. But again, back to the sort of incremental adoption, you'll likely be wanting to adopt those platforms a little by little. You can't
Mhm.
necessarily throw them all in at once. So you really need to think of this as a series of increments, and things like the identifier management and the data catalog are probably good places to start. And as you said, there are a number of open and other commercial tools that can support this, but it's definitely worth looking at the market and doing your own analysis to help you pick the ones that you need, and learning from others, obviously, in our industry.
Finally, if you could leave our audience with one key takeaway, one thing to know to achieve excellence with fair data that goes beyond just the theory, what would it be?
I mean, I think this comes back to the cultural change that FAIR really has placed data as such a critical asset of any organization. I think especially true in the area I know well, in life science and agro. But I think it's really making sure that you treat data as a valuable asset, as a product, and that when you're thinking about it as a product, you can think about the fair journey to make that product more useful, both in terms of a data consumer, but also supporting the data creator in making their life easier, like the use of vocabularies on
Mm.
ontologies at the start, even things like the way the tool supports suggestions in terms of what to use. All of those can help this journey. So really focus on the data, focus on the basics of FAIR first, findable and accessible, and then grow as your team grows and as your experience grows, because it will be a journey for everyone, not just in terms of adoption, but also the whole organization and all your partners that you work with.
Wow, thanks, Nick. That's all the time we have for today's episode. If you liked this topic and want to hear more industry trends, be sure to like and subscribe to our podcast. We also have a newsletter that highlights current events on a weekly basis, which you can sign up for at the link on the screen, or check out the episode bio for the link if you're just listening.